Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating and honestly kind of contradictory reality about a nation sitting right at the crossroads of global security. We're talking about Pakistan. We're going to be drawing strictly from a really compelling recent analysis published in Dawn by former State Bank Governor Ishrat Husain. And what we're looking at is a country that's experiencing this incredible geopolitical ascent on the world stage, while at the exact same time, it's grappling with some incredibly deep, systemic domestic vulnerabilities. So, think about this for a second. How exactly does a country mediate a 50-year superpower stalemate while its own economy is basically hanging by a thread? That is the central paradox we are exploring today. It's a dramatic, almost dizzying contrast between undeniable external prowess and very, very real internal economic fragilities. Let's get right into it. Part 1. The emerging middle power. Just look at the sheer density of consequential events packed into a single 12-month window. It's wild. In May 2025, Pakistan completely surprised global observers by demonstrating high-level military capability in an aerial war with a significantly larger power. Then, fast forward to late 2025, and they pull off this massive diplomatic tightrope walk. We're talking about building trust with the US, sustaining deep ties with China, entering into a Saudi defense pact, all while keeping constructive ties with Iran. It's like a giant puzzle. And then, the kicker, May 2026, the country takes center stage by facilitating direct talks and a ceasefire between a superpower and a neighbor that literally hadn't spoken face-to-face in nearly 5 decades. This astonishing timeline is exactly why analysts are now officially labeling Pakistan an emerging middle power. Part 2. The missing third pillar. Now, according to Husain's framework, a nation's true strength really rests on 3 pillars. Number 1 is military capability. Check. Number 2 is diplomatic reach. Check again. But number 3, economic and technological capacity, well, that's the critical missing link here. Pakistan has absolutely proven its competence externally, but this third pillar, this is where the entire foundation is incredibly vulnerable. And honestly, nothing illustrates that internal vulnerability more starkly than this single number, 40%. The prevailing economic model has essentially been an elitist one, where a very narrow segment captures the benefits, leading to highly uneven progress. So the stark, uncomfortable reality is that nearly 40% of the population currently lives in poverty. And the systemic issues suppressing growth? They're compounding. For starters, the country recently slipped to a low ranking on the Human Development Index. On top of that, the economy has shifted into what economists call premature deindustrialization, which basically means a heavy, risky reliance on imports. Add to that incredibly high graduate unemployment because the education system just doesn't match what the labor market actually needs. And to top it all off, you have an undertaxed agricultural sector with low productivity that ends up putting all the burden on formal businesses. It's a tough situation. This whole economic setup leaves the country deeply exposed. Recently, external shocks, like disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz, really laid bare these fragilities. For instance, when the UAE withdrew its deposits, Saudi Arabia had to step in immediately just to replace them. Relying on short-term financial inflows, or geopolitical rent, is incredibly risky. It delays actual meaningful reform and leaves the whole system vulnerable to sudden global shocks. Part 3. A crisis of governance. So what's causing all this? Well, the root cause of these symptoms is a failure of governance and institutions. First, there's a crippling tendency toward policy discontinuity. Basically, previous efforts just get tossed out. For example, there was a really promising 2022 initiative for performance agreements between the Prime Minister and various ministries, and it was entirely abandoned after a change in government. Then, contrast that instability with the issue of centralized authority. Decision-making is increasingly bottlenecked right at the top, in the Prime Minister's and Chief Minister's offices. Everything slows to a crawl, and the actual institutional capacity is completely undermined. And, this unpredictability acts as a massive risk premium for investors. And the economic cost is totally real. Investors simply aren't going to make long-term commitments when the rules might literally change overnight. Just to put that into perspective, back in the 2000s, investment exceeded 20% of GDP, driving growth to around 6%. Today, because of that risk premium, investment has stagnated around 15%, and that constrains growth to a sluggish 3 to 4%. That drop right there, that is the actual price tag of a governance crisis. Part 4. Reforming the system.
But it's not all doom and gloom. The source outlines a very clear blueprint to fix this stop-go pattern in policymaking. And the key is, instead of creating more random committees, it demands actionable structural changes. To solve those centralized bottlenecks we talked about, clear responsibilities absolutely must be given to empower line ministries and professional civil servants. For the issue of incomplete decentralization, authority needs to be fully devolved to local governments. And to fix that academic misalignment driving unemployment, universities must forge strong, real-world industry linkages rather than just chasing academic publications.
That point on decentralization is absolutely crucial. While the 18th Amendment and the 7th NFC Award did strengthen provincial autonomy, it's still incomplete. Fully devolving authority down to local governments could completely unlock the massive potential of resource-rich but currently lagging regions, like Balochistan. Giving underdeveloped districts actual control over their own priorities is proven to enhance service delivery, reduce local grievances, and invite real private investment. And reversing this broader economic trend requires serious education and technology reforms to combat premature deindustrialization. Remember that term? That happens when an economy shifts away from manufacturing and straight toward imports and trading, before it's actually built a self-sustaining industrial foundation. In today's knowledge-driven world, you simply cannot survive on imports alone. No way. You need real technological capability and a skilled workforce to actually drive sustainable growth.
Part 5. The ultimate end goal.
Husain brings this entire analysis together with a really powerful concluding thought. He says, achieving middle power status is not merely a function of diplomatic success or military strength. It also requires a robust economic foundation, capable institutions, and an inclusive development model. The military and diplomatic successes of the last year are profound, there's no denying that. But to actually sustain them for the long haul, that internal foundation has got to be rebuilt. So, we'll leave you with this provocative question to think about. Can Pakistan build the economic engine needed to match its soaring geopolitical ambitions? Or will it remain a fragile player in an increasingly multipolar world? The external capabilities are proven, for sure. The monumental task right now is translating that into sustained, inclusive economic transformation. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep learning, and we will see you next time.